It is great to be with all of you. Thank you, Dean Gupta, for your kind words. And thank you to my colleague, John, for getting me here. Really honored to have a chance to speak with all of you and participate in this wonderful program. And today, as the Dean mentioned, I wanted to just talk a little bit about these sort of seismic shifts we're seeing in the world of commerce as the digital age advances and takes on new shape and new texture. Talk about what it means for business, what it means for QVC, how we're trying to navigate this new world. So I'll attempt to frame that. But before I do that, let me talk a little bit about what we're seeing more broadly and then kind of bring it back to what we think it means for QVC, and perhaps there's some lessons or observations that will be of use to all of you. Internet, I don't have to tell all of you, is changing everything. It fundamentally changes the rules of business in ways that are unpredictable, challenging, exciting. There seem to be these three kind of iron rules of the internet that are emerging. If it can be free, it will be. If it can be known, it will be. If it can be rated, it will be. And so today's consumer approaches commerce with much more empowerment, much more knowledge, much more ability to control events than at any point in history. And of course, today's consumers also, over the internet, band together into these really interesting communities through all of the virtual networks that are emerging today. And by forming those virtual communities, they take on higher levels of power, empowerment, control over the experience. A lot of that is wonderful and exciting for consumers, but also a great challenge for business. Because the simple fact is that the net, for many traditional industries, has been a massive destroyer of value, right? Free grows fast. Free is hard to compete with. And so we've seen value eke out of many traditional industries as this consumer is more empowered. Look at a few examples. In the music industry, we are seeing record levels of consumption of music. People listen to more music than ever before, and yet the total revenues to the music industry are falling at precipitous rates. Look at newspapers. People consume more news than ever before, or at least things that pass as news. But the revenue generated by the news industry and the news gathering organizations continues to erode, potentially at some jeopardy to the quality of news coverage, while the consumption rises. TV. The consumption of video continues to grow, but the ability to monetize that video, if you are a maker of content or a distributor of content, has eroded over time because the consumer has all these choices to disintermediate the traditional providers of these services. And in retailing, closer to home for me, we talk a lot about this race to the bottom. That anyone can search on any product on the internet and find the absolute lowest price at any second in time. Free shipping has become the norm in the internet space. And so there's this constant race to be the lowest price. And once in a while you'll see the powers like Amazon and Walmart go head-to-head to see who can offer a book cheaper or have a lower price. You know, we are in the holiday season, very important time for us and other retailers. You know, the holiday season used to get kicked off on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, with the big sales. As you may have noticed, now all of the retailers talk about Black Friday sales in October. And so that will continue to move forward as price becomes the predominant driver of activity in retailing. So for all of us who are in the business of selling things to consumers, whether we're selling news or music or products or services, it's a very uncertain and interesting time. So with that as context, let me talk a little bit about QVC and how we're trying to navigate these turbulent waters. As the Dean mentioned, we were founded in 1986 amid kind of a sort of an internet-like bubble of companies jumping into the TV retailing industry. And when we joined, we were actually a late entrant into the industry. There were literally dozens and dozens of companies that we're in the home shopping business. And we, like them, sold primarily jewelry and collectible kinds of products to people over the airwaves. But we had one differentiating factor. We had one kind of insight that our founding father, Joe Siegel, brought, which is selling products over TV is inherently untrustworthy. It's an industry filled with charlatans who are trying to trick you into buying something. They don't really care if you ever come back. They just want to hook you on the sale. And so we're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to focus on building trust with customers over the long term. We're going to focus on quality. We're going to focus on value. We're going to focus on customer service. And we're going to try to get you to be a repeat customer because you are so engaged with the product and the process that you want to keep coming back. And that, through 25 years, has been our core principle. And it has served us well. And so today we are approaching $8 billion global retailer. Most of those folks that were there when we started are gone. We're about 4 times bigger than the next biggest guy in this space. So we think that focus on trust has mattered. But having said that, we always get asked the question, does your concept make any sense in this internet digital world we live in? It seems like an old-fashioned kind of idea in today's world. And certainly ever since I've joined, and long before I was at QVC, we've been asked the question, how can you survive? We were told that digital TV would kill QVC. We grew up in a world where we were one of 30 channels, right? Now we're one of 500 channels. We grew up before there was an internet and e-commerce, and so you didn't have other means to shop from home. Who needs QVC in a world of e-commerce? And I could go on with all the things that posed great peril and risk to our business. At least today, and I never am so cocky to speak about tomorrow, but at least through today we've been able to navigate these waters, continue to grow our business. We've had a nice track record of revenue growth. This is revenue growth for our U.S. and international markets over the last 20-some years. You can see that 2007 and 2008, in the midst of the Great Recession, our revenue growth flattened out. So we were certainly not immune from this once in 50 years economic contraction that we all felt. We're pleased that over the last year, our revenue is back on track and growing at a fairly healthy rate. So we've had a good track record of growth, but certainly not one that we take for granted. We also believe, and this is different than other people that play in the digital space today, we do believe our shareholders want us to return cash flow and profitability to them, and so we try to not just be focused on building market share, but doing it in a profitable way. Our profit margins are about twice that of most other traditional retailers, and about 3 times that of Amazon, and substantially better than most internet players. So we have a formula that, at least to this point, has enabled us to drive above average profitability back to our shareholders and grow our business. And by the way, add new customers. That revenue growth you saw isn't just coming from old customers repeating. Over the last 12 months, we added about 3 million new customers to the QVC family. And what's ironic for us is that the thing that was going to kill us, the internet, has been the thing that's been driving a lot of our growth. We're one of the 3 or 4 largest general merchandise retailers on the web today. Our QVC.com business is one of the largest .com retailers in the world. And we continue to grow that business at high rates. The top line on this chart is just the growth rate of our .com business, which far exceeds the growth rate of the internet overall, internet retailers overall. So for at least the time being, we think we have a formula that is working, but it is a formula we have to keep evolving and changing and trying to keep pace with all the changes in the landscape. And that's what makes this job exciting and challenging. So what I wanted to do for the rest of the presentation is just talk about some of the things we're trying to do to stay at or ahead of this evolution in the industry and keep evolving our business. So let me talk about a handful of learnings and focus points that we have in our business. The first perhaps sounds obvious, But what's interesting is that it's really, in many ways, diminishing as an art form, and that is picking great products. Great exclusive content really matters for a retailer. It is what fundamentally keeps people coming back. And so we view our job as curators. Curators of a unique kind of assortment. We want to pick 150 items to put on air every day that are unique, interesting, that make the inaccessible accessible, that serve an aspiration you have, that help you solve a problem, that help you connect with home, with family, with life in a new and an interesting way. And we become the trusted authority and the editor in the sea of products that you can get by going to any internet site to tell you about 150 products that we think are interesting and relevant and meaningful for you. And unlike our founding days when that product range was fairly narrow, today it's very broad. It could be a designer like Isaac Mizrahi, who has wonderful products at Neiman's and on Madison Avenue that most people can't afford, but we'll bring Isaac and his products at a price point that people can afford to QVC, or Bobbi Brown Cosmetics. And it's not just about bringing Isaac's products or Bobbi's products, it's about bringing them so that you can interact with Bobbi Brown or interact with Isaac Mizrahi in addition to their products. It could be innovative consumer electronics and trying to be first to market with some new element or new feature and explain that in an intriguing way. It could be interesting personalities that maybe you watch on TV. So if you're a food fan and you watch Rachel Ray on the Food Network, well, you can watch Rachel Ray on QVC and buy her products in addition to watching her talk about food. Or if you're into fashion, Rachel Zoe. We'll try to bring you products that aren't well known. Dylan's Candy Bar is a great, wonderful candy shop in New York that everyone who's in New York goes to. But we can bring that experience to everyone across the U.S. So product matters. And in many ways, merchandising and buying, I think, is kind of a dying art. If you're in traditional retailing, it's all about financial management as a buyer. If you're in internet retailing, it's all about the platform and marketing. Those things are all good. But it's not fundamentally about curating great products. So that's the first point. The second point is that there's been this absolute explosion in the consumption of video. And the internet has enabled that explosion. We think that's a very good thing for us. So for us, it's about how do we create a much richer and more immersive and more three-dimensional experience than most retailers can provide, and use the power of video to do that. We believe in video as a way to tell stories, to educate you about products, make a connection between someone that you find interesting and their products and our customers. We see retailing as theater. You know, kind of the old days of great retailers, part of what retailing was about theater. It was about creating a broader and more dynamic experience, broadening your horizons. We're trying to do that through the new power of video, video over multiple mediums. So for example, we'll connect you with interesting celebrities. We'll merge entertainment and commerce in interesting ways. So if you are a fan of Hell's Kitchen and Chef Ramsay, you can experience, the chef was on QVC yesterday, and you can take that entertainment experience and now blend it with a commerce experience. If you're into fashion, we'll take you to New York for Fashion Week. We'll take you under the tents of Bryant Park, now Lincoln Center, and give you our own runway shows alongside all the other runway shows that are happening, but in a much more immediate and instant kind of way that the traditional bridge designers can't do. If you love the Oscars, we take you to the Oscars for an amazing Oscars party every March. If you're a foodie, we take you to the Food and Wine Festival in Aspen, which is an amazing experience, and bring you products from the festival. All those things have enabled us to be a highly rated network. We have viewership levels that are comparable to other leading entertainment networks. So this notion of making retailing an experience, making it theater, and drawing viewership seems to help and make a difference for us. But of course, what's new today is it's not just about TV. It is about the power of video over multiple platforms. So today we talk about a 4-screen strategy. We talk about creating compelling content for the TV, for the PC, for the smartphone, and for the iPad. And so today you can access QVC content on all of those platforms, and we try to find ways to tailor that content to the relevance of that particular platform and that particular medium. And we think we can do that in a way that differentiates us from a traditional e-commerce retailer. So we believe in video and the power of video to create immersive experiences. The third point, which builds on the second, is that I think mobile is going to change the shopping landscape in fundamental ways, ways we can't remotely begin to predict as we sit here today. And the impact of mobile on retailing means many different things depending on what sector of retailing you're in, which we could talk about. But for us, it gets to the point I just made. The ability to now have an amazing live video experience over all these mobile platforms. So I can access the live QVC broadcast from Studio Park in Westchester, Pennsylvania, anywhere in the world, at any time, instantaneously, with a great high-definition viewing experience on my iPad. And over time, I'm going to interact with that viewing experience in really interesting ways. It's not just about access, but having access to that viewing experience on the go everywhere is very powerful. But the next wave will be, how do I create a really immersive interactive experience where you're interacting with the video on your iPad and data elements and commerce and community elements and bringing it all together into this very rich experience, and maybe even simultaneously interacting with your big screen in your living room. Forget whether we call that a TV or we call it something else. But I now have all these platforms that create this immersive experience. So we believe in the iPhone and the iPad, and we've been, quite frankly, amazed by the rate of adoption of our customers to these new devices and the amount of commerce we're doing over these new devices, and we're just at the starting point. And what's amazing about these devices is I can create the QVC that you care about, because QVC is really diverse, and even our best customers hate 80% of what we do, and that's fine. I just care that you love 1% or 5% or 20%, because we're about appealing to a broad range of people. But if you love Isaac Mizrahi, then in a week or two you'll be able to download an app that's Isaac Mizrahi's Closet. If you love food, in the next week or so you'll be able to download an app that takes our #1 rated food program and creates an immersive experience around that food program. So it creates these mini communities. And of course, with the power of these platforms, you can do that in a fairly low-cost way. So mobile is very powerful. I talked about the community becoming the marketer. I talked about the community being empowered and in control. So we as marketers have to have this fundamental insight, which is we are no longer in control. We can pretend like we're in control, we can kid ourselves, we can sit behind our desks and act as if we're in control, but we're not in control. The customer is in control of your brand, and so we as brand marketers have to understand that and accept it and nourish it and support it. And in many ways, that's not new for QVC, because the QVC shopper affects the QVC experience continuously. I like to talk about QVC being the great shopper democracy, because here's what happens on QVC, which is I have a producer who sits at the producing desk producing a show, and that producer sees this data on his screen. And this data is how many calls and clicks are coming in every 6 seconds. And he will change the show in real time based on when that line is going up or down. When that line is going up, he says, hey, that's really good, let's do some more of that. When that line is going down, he says, that's not very good, let's not do so much of that. So QVC changes continuously through a 24-hour day. What we do over the course of a day may or may not bear much relationship to what we thought we would do, because the shopper changes it. The shopper changes it through her actions. And so now in the new world, we have all these other interconnected forums to engage the customer. Forums on QVC, from community forums to ratings and reviews, forums off of QVC like Facebook or YouTube. And the community is very, very engaged in all these forums. We use that community to connect her to QVC, her QVC, which could be her favorite designer, her favorite topic, her favorite club. We use it to connect her to her virtual friends. And we let that consumer be the brand spokesperson. and bring new people into the brand fold and market it for us. But we also have to, therefore, if we're going to let the customer be the marketer, we have to listen to her. As my friend Mr. Hunter could tell you, we are overwhelmed with data from our customers. She is not shy. She talks about us. She talks about us on 1,000 forums, some within the QVC four walls, some outside of it. And we've invested in big systems called text analytics systems to take all of this information and feed it back to our team to interpret it, download it, understand what it tells us, and then change what we do based on what she said. Because if we don't change what we do based on what she said, then she will be a marketer for us. It just won't be marketing it the way we want. So that community is very powerful, and we have to really respect it. We think global matters in this world. We all know that the consumer has a more global mindset. We all know there are fundamental the factors at work in this world, like the explosion of broadband or mobile, creating access where people didn't used to have access before. And so how do we leverage that to create QVC experiences around the world? We did launch our newest market in Italy a few weeks ago, where I think the next generation of QVC markets will be markets that aren't large established markets like Germany or Japan or UK. I think the next markets for QVC will be China and Brazil and India, and so we're in active exploration about how do we win in those kinds of markets and tap into this growing middle class in those markets. Digital commerce enables that. I think changing economic fortunes around the world and growth rates around the world make it a necessity for that kind of diversification. We also believe in scale. And in the world where a lot of the new entrants in the world of e-commerce don't have scale, we think that we can leverage scale to our advantage. And this is the world that my friend John lives in every day. We probably take more phone calls in a year than anyone else in the world. We probably ship out more packages in a year than anyone else in the world, save perhaps Amazon. And so we have invested over the years in massive scaled infrastructure to do that well and to serve our customers well. But here's the challenge in today's world. It used to be that you built scale to lower costs, standardize outputs, simplify the business, keep your costs down. What we're finding is we now have to use scale to create intimacy, use scale to create personalization, because your QVC experience needs to be different from yours and yours. Because each of you are different, have different expectations, different needs, different wants. And so how do you leverage scale and leverage technology to your advantage and present to you as a consumer the QVC experience you want, give you relevant messages over the mediums you want to receive those messages, connect you to the operator that makes sense for you, tailor the delivery experience to what you want. So if you want your stuff delivered at the back door, we'll know that and we'll deliver it that way. And on and on. It's using scale to create an intimate experience that's relevant uniquely to you. That's the next horizon for us and a massive area of investment and focus. And the final point I'd make in terms of our observations and learnings about this new world is when we started it in 1986, we said we think it's about trust. And 24 years later, we would say we think it's about trust. And all the other stuff I've talked about are enablers, but at the core value is the relationship with each of you. Once you make 2 to 3 purchases from QVC, you will be a customer for life. That's a statistically valid statement to make. No one ever leaves QVC. And not because they've been brainwashed, because they're actually pretty sophisticated, but because it's sort of good. It's sort of a good value, good products, a good experience. We do what we say we would do. And so that's the part that has become unwavering for us. And we're really proud of this chart, because I think none of the other charts would be possible without this chart. This chart just says that we try to do what we say we would do, and as a result of that, our customers rate us highly. So as an example, about 95% of our customers, on topics like ease of doing business, satisfaction, intention to reorder, 95% of our customers rate us a 7 on a 7-point scale. Not a 5, 6, or 7 on a 7-point scale, not a 6 or 7 on a 7-point scale, a 7 on a 7-point scale. That's taken many years to earn. It's largely a tribute to John Hunter, who has had that vision and built that ability for us. And as a result of that, even though we welcomed 3 million new customers to us, to our franchise this past year, 95% of our revenues will come from repeat customers. So we try to keep earning that business every day. So those are some observations. I would tell you that in this interesting world we live in, on any given day we get far more wrong than right. So it really is about constant experimentation. The only thing I can tell you with high confidence that if you were to invite me back in a year, I'd probably tell you that half the things I said turned out not to be exactly right, or they've changed, or it's different. And so, as a large organization, we are embracing the values of nimbleness and agility and experimentation and innovation. And I talked, for example, about some of those new mobile apps we'll be launching. Some we know with high certainty will not work. We just don't know which ones. And we'll have new ideas in a year. And in a year, if you'd invited me here a year ago, I wouldn't have mentioned the iPad. I wouldn't have even heard of it. And now I'm telling you that I think it could change our business model. So who knows what I'll say next year? I certainly have no idea. And that's what makes it fun. It's a wonderfully fun and interesting and challenging time to be in retailing. And I want to open it up for questions, but before I do that, I do want to just show a quick video. I'm hoping and assuming all of you are avid QVC viewers and customers, but on the offhand that any of you aren't, I wanted to show a few minutes of clip from something called Fashion's Night Out, because I think it illustrates our goal to create a really immersive experience that's unique in retailing, engage the community, leverage all these multiple devices, a lot of the first several bullet points. And Fashion's Night Out, for those of you who haven't heard of it, is something that happens once a year in New York. It just started last year. It happens in September. Started by Vogue magazine, Council of Fashion Designers, as a way to reinvigorate retailing. And basically the whole city of New York and Milan and Paris and other cities has a huge celebration. And all the retailers are open late into the night. And we draw people into the city and celebrate the arts of the fashion world. And this September, we put up a QVC pop-up store and pop-up studio in Rockefeller Center. And we invited our customers to come, and we did 17 hours of live broadcasting from that pop-up studio, and we sold products, and we did community events, and we engaged people, and we had a lot of fun. And I just want to show you a little video of what happened there, because I think it illustrates what we're trying to do to create this differentiated, immersive experience.
Hello, Jason Chamberlain with Morgan Stanley Smith Barney.
Jason.
I'd be interested to know a little bit of how you manage your strategic partnerships. So for example, Bravo Channel's bringing on a new celebrity, Rachel Zoe. How does it come to pass that QVC is part of that show and becomes part of your marketing strategy? Or another example, Apple's coming out with the iPad. They're in development stage. I'm sure that they want that to be a successful e-commerce venue. At what point does the partnership come together? Do they approach you, or are you approaching them? Thanks.
Sometimes they approach us. Sometimes we approach them. I think, fortunately, with where our brand is today, more and more people approach us, so it makes it a little bit easier that we have access to those kinds of opportunities. Sometimes the partnership is with the celebrity, the personality, and sometimes the partnership is with the network. Sometimes it's both. But with people like Rachel Zoe or Isaac Mizrahi, we'll typically develop a relationship with that person, and then we'll sort of find mutual ways to build their brand and our brand through their channels and our channels. If I took the Apple example, we will be launching applications for all the different tablets that are going to come out. And obviously, everyone is trying to catch up with Apple and launch tablets. And we would expect to be first to market with providing some of those tablets. And I can't comment on specifics today, but we would expect to be first to market to provide some of those tablets and have QVC apps embedded in the tablets. So, the power of the model is we could launch a new tablet, premiere it, get an audience around the fact that we're premiering a new tablet, and have QVC preloaded as an application. So, long way of saying there's not one model. It's, we're kind of always out in the market trying to build a relationship, build networks, and find ways to leverage common benefits. So what we provide is we provide access to 200 million homes around the world, up from 180 because of the launch of Italy. And we provide commerce abilities. And a cable network, as an example, has homes, but doesn't have commerce abilities, and would always like to have more eyeballs. So we try to just find ways to, leverage those shared benefits.
You mentioned going global as one of your strategies. As you start to tackle countries like China, India, Brazil, how are some of those strategies evolving or changing? What are some of the challenges or difficulties that you're seeing? And the second question, or the second part of that question is, are sort of the products that you would be addressing, will they be changing as you start to then market to China, Brazil, India?
Each market is unique. I think that the future models will look different than the past models due to the uniqueness of each market. So if we took China as an example, we would love to find a way to build a sizable business in China. I think there's no reason over time that a business in China couldn't rival the size of the business that we have in the U.S. There are layers of challenge with that, starting with one of the real, probably the single most difficult limitation we have on international expansion is that we are in an industry that is heavily, heavily regulated. Access to airwaves is a tough thing, and it's especially a tough thing in a market like China, which isn't eager to turn over live airwaves to a foreign company. So how do we do that? Well, we are in deep levels of discussion with various entities within China, including many state-run entities, about a public-private kind of partnership. So that's the biggest hurdle, is getting access to those homes, getting access to those airwaves, and doing it in a way that's locally appropriate and locally relevant. Once we get to that stage, then it's really about just sort of letting the local market take over and build the QVC that's relevant for that market. So each of our QVCs is run by people in that market. All the products are purchased locally and tailored to the needs of that market. And so, we launched a few weeks ago in Italy, very different, obviously, than China. But, what sells in Italy is different than what sells in neighboring Germany. And so we're letting the Italians sort that out and test and experiment and react to what the consumer cares about. And that's really the key for us. Let each market kind of develop on its own in a way that's relevant for that market. We find most other things work themselves out, in terms of having the right infrastructure and the right kind of access. Those things tend to work themselves out once we can get the airwaves and then field a really great local team and empower that local team. And that's really, I think the key to successful expansion is empower a strong local team. And just as a side note, I would tell you, having been, spent time with our partners in Italy, our team members in Italy, there's nothing more powerful than to see the blend of a strong company culture, and I think QVC has a strong and positive culture, with the local culture. And to engage with our Italian associates who have been with us for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, but who have embraced how QVC works, but then brought their own flair to it and their own cultural norms to it, is really powerful. And learning how to blend those two things is sort of the secret sauce to making these local markets work.
I know that 2008 and 2009, as your diagram showed, was a very difficult time for the retailers. I was just wondering, how did QVC respond to the economic downturn in terms of altering the business strategy or maybe the marketing mix of how you targeted your customers? I was just wondering if you could give us some insight into how your company responded to the downturn.
We were, when you look back at that time period, it felt like the world was ending. There was enormous uncertainty about what would happen. It was a really powerful lesson and reminder about exactly how sophisticated and in tune the customer is. And I've shared this story with many people, but on the day in September of 2008 when the bank bailout bill went before Congress for the first time, and Congress refused to pass it the first time. They then passed it a week later. On that day, our business dropped 40%. And it just shows you that you have a consumer who is very in tune with the headlines. And I know if it's a good news or a bad news day by our sales. And that sensitivity to everything from stock market ebbs and flows to how the gas price changed at the pump last week matters to that consumer. So how do you navigate through that to get to your question? You know, for us it was a multi-pronged approach. Step one was we said, okay, we have to have our costs in line, we have to have our inventory in line, and so you sort of do the hard things you need to do to make sure that you're not going to, said bluntly, lose control of the business, that you're not going to, whatever might come in terms of what consumers' ability to shop, that we're managing our costs very tightly, that we're managing our inventories very tightly and very closely, and so you just get much closer to every element of your business, challenge everything you do, keep everything very tightly in control. That was one element. The second element, though, at the same time was to say, we do not want to give up our bright future. And while everyone else is in survival mode and cutback mode, we're going to invest wisely, but we're going to invest. And we launched the largest technology makeover in our company's history during the midst of the recession, because all the things I'm talking about we couldn't do without an entirely new technology suite. And we launched Italy. We announced our plans to launch Italy during the middle of this recession, because we said we've got to be able to be tight, controlled, managed in the short term, but also use the recession, use the crisis as an opportunity. Use the crisis as an opportunity to get ahead of the competition and to reposition ourselves for this new world. And so we had to spend a lot of time talking to our teams about why are we cutting here and spending here. It's hard, can be hard to understand. But they both made sense. They were both necessities, and we talked a lot with the team about how we were making those choices. And then the third element was just to listen to the consumer and listen even more intently to the consumer. And not try to predict her behavior, but watch her behavior and respond to it. So for example, I think our ingoing assumption was higher price point products are going to get, not going to be able to sell. People will be shifting to lower price point, more commodity-like products. The actual behavior was the opposite of that. The actual behavior was the opposite of that. People were more selective, and when they bought things that were different, innovative, fresh. Newness became much more important. And our price points, our average selling price actually rose during the recession as she was making these really thoughtful and careful choices about if she's going to spend money, it's going to have to be something that's really special and different. And so we allowed her to shift our mix to that. She might save up to buy a great TV for the home, and because she's staying in more. We saw cooking and dining products rise because she's staying in more. But we also saw beauty and accessory sales do well because she wanted to have a little bit of a way to treat herself and a little bit of a way to treat her family. And so the power of our model is we can respond to that. We don't have to predict because we're not necessarily great predictors. We're great responders. I think those were the key parts of it. And I guess the final point, which I sort of touched on, we had to keep the team with us. The team was scared. It was an uncertain time. They were equally frightened by all the headlines. We asked the team to make sacrifices. We went one year where we made very careful choices. Well, for 1 year, we said, we're not going to do a merit increase this year. And we talked about why we weren't going to do that in an uncertain time. And that was for 2009. We chose not to do things that other companies did, like stop funding 401k plans, because we said we can't, that's the employee's future. We've got to protect that. But in the short term, we'll pull back on merit. We spent a lot of time talking to teams about that. And then when we got through 2009 and we did okay, we retroactively gave the team members a one-time bonus to say, hey, we got through it. You helped us get through it, so we're going to take care of you. And I can't emphasize that element of it enough. have to keep the team with you. And your associates are smart, thoughtful. They just want to be told the truth. What's happening? What are you seeing? What do you think? What are the risks? Are we in trouble? Are we in it together? Are we sharing in sacrifices together? Or are you getting rich and everyone else is getting screwed? They need to know that. And you need to level with them and talk about it. And I write a letter to all of our associates every Monday morning. And just tell them as plainly and simply as I can tell them, here's what's going on. And I did that before the recession, and I've done it since the recession. But I was really glad I had established that principle prior to the recession hitting. Because now they had learned that I do talk to them and I do tell the truth, and the things I say I mean. And so I think, and not just me, I don't mean to personalize it, I think our whole leadership team embodies that principle. And that was very important for us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can you describe her, your customer, and which segment do you see growing the most in the future?
I do say her because I would say about 85% of our sales are to women, as best we can tell through research. So not all women, but 85%. Fairly diverse mix of people within that, to the point I made earlier that you may hate 80% of what we do and love 20%. Our demographics and psychographics change from hour to hour depending on what show's on. In general, if I had to put some broad markers around her, I would say she's a woman between the ages of 35 and 65. We have women in every age range, but if you kind of look at the preponderance, it would be 35 to 65. Somewhat above average income, above average education. From a behavioral standpoint, just sort of a couple interesting elements. She, not surprisingly, she enjoys shopping, and not just shopping on QVC. And we've never asked for her, we want her to be loyal but not exclusive. And so she over-indexes at Nordstrom's and Neiman Marcus and Sephora's and many places. So she likes to shop, she enjoys it, it's inspirational for her. She also is interested in that she over-indexes on things like loves gardening, loves cooking, community, church. She's someone that just sort of feels like she's very engaged. She's engaged with family, she's engaged with life, and I think that's part of what appeals to her about us, because she can go from a gardening show to a cooking show to or whatever, and have this really rich experience with us. But beyond those kind of few attributes, it's fairly diverse underneath that, but those would be some kind of central tendencies. You know, the good news is retailers and marketers love to chase young people. No offense to the young people in this room, but you know, the 18 to 24-year-old customer is a nightmare. That customer is completely unloyal, no brand loyalty, changes their mind on a frequent basis, and doesn't have a whole lot of income. But everyone is geared to talking to her. So I think another part of the sort of secret sauce of QVC is we'll talk to a woman who is in many ways ignored by marketers. We talk to real women leading real lives. And I think that matters. And by the way, all of our models aren't size 2s, and all of our hosts aren't size 2s. We show real people leading real lives, wearing real clothes, doing real things. And that person is really kind of largely ignored in the marketing world of today. And I think that's part of what makes her appeal to, despite what I just showed you with Fashion Week, that's an element of our business, a really fun, dynamic element of our business. But there are many other elements of our business that aren't like that. That's a bit about the customer.
I was wondering how you respond to websites such as Gilt.com and all the other flash sale websites, and do you think they'll be around after the downturn?
And I suspect some will be. You know, these are really interesting sites. I'm sure all of you have seen them. They basically do these flash sales. So at noon, they'll have a flash sale, and by 12:05, they're sold out of, you know, 2/3 of things. I'm never fast enough to take advantage of it. I think they're interesting. I think they, in some ways, that notion of excitement and edited assortment and call it an impulse purchase, although I don't really like the term impulse because I think it demeans the customer. But they feature some of those elements that are common, I think, to what QVC does. There are some negatives to those models today. They tend not to have good customer service. They tend not to have the same kind of standards we have. That hasn't slowed them down. They've been explosive in their growth. But I think they'll have to address the customer service issue to build that loyalty factor and sustainability factor. And then the other unknown, to your point, is they have been fueled by all the excess product that's been on the market due to the recession. They're now not able to get access to that amount of product, so now they're doing what all other what traditional outlet stores have done, which is you're not really buying a great designer product at a huge discount. You're buying a specially made product with cheaper fabric, with that designer's label in it. That's still a fine deal, but it's not the 90% off the bridge line. It's a made-up line that's made up exclusively for gilt at a cheaper fabrication, just as an outlet store is today. I think those are some of the risks they face. That said, they have clearly engaged customers, and I admire anyone that does anything fresh and innovative and comes up with an idea. And they came up with an idea. It's really a French idea, and there's a company, Van Privé in France, that pioneered it. And they're having some success. I think there'll be an interesting model. I don't think there'll be a dominant model. I doubt they'll go away. I think they'll take on new flavors that none of us can predict. But they will need to work on some of these elements of service and product availability to, I think, be sustainable.
Sir, you mentioned that the QVC thrive on constant experimentations on new technologies. I was wondering if does your organization has any strategy to anticipate the new technology?
I would say we're learning. I wouldn't candidly describe it as a strength today. What we have found is we're in this interesting evolution. As one of the first players in this space, we face what a lot of companies of our age face, which is this legacy technology infrastructure that's all custom built, highly inflexible. And so even if we do a good job of anticipating a new technology, our ability to respond has been very constrained by this inflexible infrastructure. So now we're moving to a contemporary technology infrastructure, heavily leveraging third parties, from IBM to Oracle, and name your partner, SAP. That's important because fundamentally what you need to do in today's world is leverage the innovation of the marketplace. I think any of our ability individually to predict an important trend is highly limited. So our job is to try to move to an environment where we can let the marketplace innovate and bring new things to us. So for example, next week, IBM, the guys from IBM's labs will be with us talking about the next generation e-commerce platform and how it seamlessly integrates social networking into that platform. Those are the sorts of market innovations that need to be able to capture quickly. So I think increasingly it's about sort of, I don't want to say giving up control, but inviting other partners into your four walls and leveraging the technology innovation of the marketplace rather than trying to own it, control it, predict it, because that typically doesn't, at least in our case, doesn't work very well.